the Swiss architect known as Le Corbusier has elaborated in 1933 the Ascent chart. The Ascent chart was, as Le Corbusier, the father of the modern urbanism, this way for shaping, since 1933, our cities based on zonification, segregation, fragmentation. Le Corbusier said, a city that have a success, a city that move fast. We need to be aware that our cities around the world have shaped in this Le Corbusier paradigm. In all cities, we have transformed the quality of life for separating the essential needs, and we have, for example, considered that the work activities should be focused in the corporate business districts. The question of the cultural activities in the cultural districts. And worst still now, to live, this is just a question of to have a roof and four walls. The social housing has become the very ugly places for living without services. In fact, I said that we have accepted the unacceptable. We have accepted a new normality for 7 decades. This new normality with the long commutes, with the long time spent just for going from my home to my office. We have accepted the single function of buildings. We have accepted the continue to build more and more buildings with the long distances. We have accepted to lose our social interactions in our neighborhood. We have accepted to live in segmented, zone fractured cities. With the 15-minute city, we wanted to change radically the city narrative, the urban and territorial narrative. For that, the response for the 21st century is to encourage people for being happy. The question is not to be smart or not smart, to have a smart city or not. The question is how could we merely be happy in a happy city, and the focus for the 50-minute city is to develop a massive proximity in all kinds of situations. This is our normality. A lot of cities are today with these separations. Digitalization today with the technology in the 21st century is very easy to observe the different colors. We could observe this concentration of the essential functions. And of course, the long commute for joining one color with another color. We wanted to fight against this artificial separation of the essential needs. To live differently without this constantly stress. We have created in an artificial way, in an excessive car dependency. We have accepted to continue to develop the city pollution based on fossil energy and to develop the mass transportation in the poor condition with the peak hours. This is Buenos Aires. This is Mongolia. This is totally crazy that in a country with the more small density by inhabitants, the half inhabitants of this country, in Mongolia, live in these conditions. The corporate business districts, 2 hours for a commute. Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia, is the most polluted city for 15 years. This is totally incredible when we have in a nomadic culture for 10, 11 centuries. This is the long commute in a big capital as Bogota. We have accepted to live with the new inequities. The most important inequities today in our cities is the couple of the spatial inequity, the spatial injustice, and the temporal injustice. The spatial injustice because we have the less and less the good conditions for living in a social housing with the services. And the temporal injustice, given that the importance of our commute in the day. Of course, in a context of we have accepted these economical inequalities. I'm not the first of people in the world for proposing a proximity as the new paradigm for transforming our life. For more than 1 century, a lot of thinkers and doers have committed for proposing a new way based on this proximity, horizontality, a new capability for having green areas, for having a more vibrant neighborhood. But the question today, for me, it was, after the COP21, to propose a concrete model for reconciling, on the one hand, sustainability for reducing our CO2 footprint, and on the other hand, to develop a more vibrant economy, a more important social exclusion. For a long time, in particular in the ecologist movement, we have a strong confrontation. If I am ecologist, if I wanted to reduce my CO2 footprint, we need to reduce the impact of the economy. And this is a real no-way contradiction. We need to find a new way, a new trajectory for going from the concept of the reduction of CO2 emissions to develop a more vibrant economy, more employment, and more social inclusion. For that, my model is just this model, the rainbow of the high-quality societal life. I am a mathematician and computer scientist before to be urbanist. I proposed a simple model available worldwide, regardless of the size of the density of cities and territories, based on a new humanistic way. We have explored a lot of cities around the world with my team at Sorbonne, and I have proposed 6 essential functions for being happy: to live in the good conditions, to work with the strong reduction with the long daily commute, to supply in proximity for creating more local jobs, local activities, more shorter circuits to use raw materials in proximity, to take care of the mental and physical health, to learn, to access to education and culture, and to enjoy in public spaces, resilient in face with the climate emergency, with air and water non-polluted. I proposed 6 social functions. The first one, we have done a color. And our proposal is very, very simple. For a long time, we have separated the color in our cities. We have proposed a new roadmap for mixing our color, mixing 2 colors, 3 colors, 4 colors, 5 colors, 6 colors. This is not a magic wand. This is not a magic dust. This is a trajectory for transforming the business model of cities, for transforming our urban life, our territorial life in a few years, for elaborating a new urban local plan, a new territorial urban plan, based on this mixity, for going towards a totally different model, a polycentric model, when in the different new centralities, new polarities, we will have this mix of the essential functions. The reduction of the CO2 is just automatically when we could give a priority for accessing to my essential needs in a proximity. If I have more schools, high schools, theater, cinema, medical services, green areas, green spaces, more sport places for different activities, open air activities. If I have the possibility for creating more vibrant neighborhood, automatically we have the possibility for reducing our CO2 emissions. The 15-minute or the 30-minute, 50-minute city for the high density zone, 30 minutes for the medium and low density is not important. This is not important to have 10, 14, 25, 32 minutes. The real importance is to transform our urban life for accessing to more and more local services in proximity. After the COVID-19, we have taken benefit of a new situation as far as the worker transformation is concerned. After the COVID-19, we have learned to work by the remote jobs. A lot of companies have decided to have just 3 or 4 days with the physical presence. The Nobel Prize, my friend Paul Krugman, has developed in 1992 for his Nobel Prize the concept of the new economic geography, for developing the nearshoring, for developing more local activities, for relocalizing. With the geopolitical crisis, with the Ukrainian war, with the Middle East war, with the different global threats, we have today, as the new national policies, this need to relocalize, to develop the nearshore, to develop more local employment. You are in this trend. My victory is not to transform my street in a more well-capable street. My victory is not to transform my street in a more bike-capable street. Of course, I agree. I am very, very happy for that. As researchers, my real victory for me is when I received a call of the mayor for saying, Carlos, yesterday we have voted a new local urban plan available for the next 10 years with your ideas. This is the case in the city of Paris, when Anne Hidalgo has voted in May 2023 the new local urban plan based on this idea. In this case, the different projects, but this is not only a question of the public spaces. This is not a question only of the school for the street. This is a question as the business model to develop the local commerce, the local shops, to develop the local employment, the local industries, to relocalizing, to transform these social housing segregations. In the east of Paris, we have 49% of social housing. In the west of Paris, 3%. This is the proof of the extreme social segregations in my city today. 2.2% of social housing in the most richest district, 42.5 in the east of Paris. Just for finishing, we have created with UN Habitat, C40 cities, UCLG, the most important association of mayors, the Global Observatory of Sustainable Proximity, for federating a lot of different efforts around the world. We have a lot of different big names. The 50-minute city, the 10-minute city, the 20-minute neighborhood, the vital district, the vital neighborhood, the complete district, etc., etc. The only real strategic point for us is to continue to develop this sustainable proximity, to continue to develop this worldwide dialogue. I will publish in a few weeks a new book, not only a theoretical book, but the concrete implementation of this concept around the world. I would to invite you to take part in this Global Observatory of Proximity. This is an effort for joining researchers, economic sector, stakeholders, mayors in this way. Thank you so much.
Carlos, thank you so much. That was marvelous, absolutely marvelous. There's so much to dig into. Well, you saw the sort of the mess of my notes before we sat down. There's about 55 million questions I want to ask. I'm going to restrict myself to a few, and let's unpack some of those ideas before I turn to the audience shortly. The themes of this conference, as the audience here have now heard, I hope more than once, are people, politics, and place. So I'm just going to unpack some of the consequences of your important work under those three headings before I turn to the wider audience. Just on place, and forgive me, I'm going to be deliberately provocative just to try and pull out some of these ideas. So, there are economists who exist, I regret to say, who would say, look, Carlos's work sounds lovely, but the real point about a city is because of the movement, that liberation of movement, whether it be through public transport or through cars, is we're getting much greater, as economists call it, and actually I think Rachel Wolf was referring to this earlier, agglomeration effects, i.e. the solicitor working in a small town in the Midlands is able to be less productive and add less value to fewer people and will therefore earn less money and be less productive than he or she would be were they living in a global city such as Paris or Hong Kong or London. So there's a challenge, I think there is an intellectual challenge to some of your work by those who say that it's in the essence of the movement linked to functionalism and to modernism that economic growth has grown. You must have heard these arguments. How do you respond to that argument?
Thank you, Nicolas, for this very important question. If we could examine today the different implementation in a lot of different cities, in particular in the big agglomerations, in big cities. The case of the city of Paris, for answering concretely today. In the west of Paris, we have created in 1962 the biggest corporate business district in Europe, La Défense, in the west of Paris, 1 million square kilometers. We have more than 500,000 people every day. And in reality, in the functionalism, in the zonification strategy after Le Corbusier, in this agglomeration, not only Paris, but the metropolis of Great Paris, 7 million inhabitants. People should go daily to La Défense, in particular, for working. One of the consequences was to have the metro line transportation and the railway transportation from the west to the east, with more than 1.2 million passengers per day, just from going to the east to the west for working, early in the morning, in the peak hours, in the very, very poor conditions. This is a concrete example. Until now, with the agglomeration, with the zonification based on corporate business districts, is in reality the origin of the very important degradation of the quality of life. What is the situation after the implementation of the 15-minute city in Paris and after the COVID-19? In this corporate business district today, we have only 3 days per week with the workers with the physical presence. The business model of the corporate business district in La Défense, but this is the same situation in Hong Kong, this is the same situation in New York, etc., is today in a really important crisis. The 15-minute city has created in a city as Paris another phenomenon, the decentralization. We have today a lot of companies which have decided to propose a lot of small buildings in all city, and instead of to have the big tower for going daily with 2 hours for a commute, we have the possibility to choose a more close place.
So thank you, that's very interesting and important answer. But so if within the polycentric town or city, which I think is what you're describing, do you think there is a role within that polycentricism, sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful, is there a role, do you think, for, or rather perhaps, how important is the role for the most important of those centres? So within a polycentric city, should there be a place which is more important for government and a place that's more important for commerce, or do you think it's all muddled up and equal?
This is a good question because, for example, the government, we have in Paris a lot of building of the government in the west area. One of the decisions, as well after the COVID-19, of the government was to reduce the presence of the employees in the west of Paris for going daily to work in this building. And we have this new decentralization, of course, with the remote job. And we have the creation of the new economic models. For example, always in the case of the city of Paris, we have a lot of hotels empty during the day, transformed today in the office for hosting meetings, conferences, discussion, in the different places. The question, for example, the retail. The retail in Paris has suffered important transformation. Instead of to have the mall for 25, 30 kilometers outside of Paris, we have more and more small retailers inside of Paris in different places. The different brands has incorporated in different places. I think that we are in the dawn of a big transformation of the business model of cities in the big agglomeration. In Hong Kong today, we have a strong relation with Hong Kong. They have today the same situation because the crisis of the real estate. We had the bankrupt of the Evergrande a few weeks in China. This is a really, really strong impact in the value chain of the real estate. And this kind of the real estate investors, etc., should switch from the former business model towards a new business model. Polycentricity, multi-purpose functions, to reduce the CO2 footprint for accessing, to propose the new local activities. I learned that, for example, in London, one of the brand of the supermarket have reduced the place of the common things for buying, for installing the places for hosting workers in this proximity.
Fascinating. I didn't know that.
In London.
But so what I think, and we must move on to place of politics, and I must come to yours. I think, I don't want to put words into your mouth, and you'll obviously contradict me if I do put words into your mouth, but it seems to me that what we're doing is actually, if the phenomenon of the 20th century, certainly the late 20th century, was one of increasing agglomeration into a handful of super cities and super centres, perhaps technology is taking us back to the place, actually the world in which Coventry was built, in which there were agglomeration effects. I think you're not saying there aren't that, but that they're more localised than centralised. Can I just move from that to a link question? I was very taken. I have the advantage over everyone else in the audience, which is I've read your new book, which no one else has because it's not been published yet. But there's a really interesting section that I hope I can say this without getting into trouble with your publisher, where you talk about 3 ways of thinking about time. You talk about chronos. We're very much under the power of chronos right now because we've only got about another 15 minutes or so. That's the measure of time. You talk about kairos, the time for creativity, and you talk about aion, which is the relationship with oneself and with the divine. One of the things that I think most frustrates and upsets me when I read a lot of engineering or planning work about places is it seems to take the humane out of the conversation. And I'd just like to ask you to sort of expand on that. How do we encourage our overlords, engineers, planners and governors to just try and put the love back into places and to demonstrate to them that it really matters?
Yes, you're right, Nicolas. I said for a long time that we need to reconsider the role of the daily time for our activities. I said that one of the consequences of the fonctionnalism, the Le Corbusier and the impact was to reduce our time only for the productivism activity. And I said, in my latest book, I said this aspect as well. This is not a question of capitalism, of the communism. I was the possibility for studying, for example, in the socialist countries at the time, the use of the daily time and the model, it was the same model in reality. We need to build the factories for the material productions, the business district, and the social housing with the long commute, and we have accepted to lose our useful time. One of the impact of the COVID-19, it's not the question to have a lockdown or not. One of the impact of the COVID-19 was for the people between 20 years old and 38, 40 years old to rediscover this useful time liberated by the new technologies and the new hierarchical organizations, less hierarchical organization. For working during the COVID-19, we have this quickly adaptation. And a lot of people have discovered this 1 hour, 2 hours present in our daily activities. And this is one of the reasons for considering that this new way for our work style is today irreversible. And with the 15-minute city, with the polycentric city, we have the possibility for proposing more activities in this useful time rediscovered. When you have more local cultural activities, cinema, theater, restaurant, commerce, more streets for walking, more bikeability. This is the opposite of the lockdown. This is the opposite because people have the possibility for deploying more and more activities in a happy proximity instead of to be obliged to take 2 hours by metro for going to my job and to lose my day without my friendly relationships with my neighbor, with my family. We have rediscovered the social interactions with the different new activities for being more happy.
Brilliant, thank you. And that, I should say that echoes with a lot of Create Streets work. And actually, you make me think the Create Streets office, which we bought and kitted out during the latter stages of lockdown, it's a much smaller office than we would otherwise have, because not everyone's there all day. And interestingly, we don't call it an office. We call it Create Streets' home. And the design brief was a mixture of a library and a pub. So it is meant to be a place where we can come together and work with joy. Right, that's enough from me. I've got so many more questions I'd like to ask, but I'm going to stop myself. I'm now going to go to the audience. So I'm afraid if you want to make a statement or a speech, I will shut you up. So questions only, please. Hands up, please. Right, gentleman there with the tie from Wiltshire. He's first. Go. And keep it brief, please. And I'll take 3, and then I'll come back to Carlos. Yes.
Thank you. Richard Clure, Leader, Wiltshire Council. Your ideas in a metropolitan setting make a great deal of sense. So government that applies them to policy for metropolitan areas and cities, and we then get them in rural areas, and they suddenly start making less sense. How do we apply your concepts to villages and really small towns where we can't create what you're talking about?
Yeah. Thank you. We can take two more questions, and then we'll come back to you, Carlos. Next question, a gentleman over there at the back. So first question about countryside, yes? I'll write them down. I've got it. I'll get it for you. Yes, please, you, sir.
Hey, I was wondering what you thought about NEOM, the Line City, which is a new city trying to implement the 15-minute city rule in a very different way to how you're proposing it.
Is that the one in Saudi Arabia, that one?
Yes, yeah.
The long, thin one?
Yeah, 200 meters wide.
New cities. And okay, we'll stop there because we'll come to you. Right. So the first question, Carlos, is how we, from the leader of Wiltshire Council, which is a rural part of England, what is the relevance of your ideas in the countryside?
Yeah. Very good question. Thank you so much. We have developed two twin concepts, in fact. The 50-minute city for the high-density zone and the 30-minute territory for the medium and low-density zone. I proposed this way in 2016, and after the COVID-19, after 2020, we have lot of medium cities and rurality places interested in to implement this model. And we have today the very concrete examples in France, in other cities. What is the key element for that? For example, in France, one of the examples is in the south of France, close to Avignon. Do you know France? Close to the pont. A small village with 5,000 inhabitants. Very small, 15 square kilometers, really small. And the mayor of this village had discovered by internet my research work, and he had decided to implement that. Three aspects. The first one, to reduce the car dependency in ruralities. This is a great challenge, to reduce the car dependency. And today, this is totally outstanding, the transformation of this village, because he has decided to enhance the roads and to implement the bike lanes, to develop a city service for biking, to
a rental service for biking, is that what you mean? Or?
Yeah. He have reserved the different parking. He have implemented the multimodality with the on-demand transport. The on-demand transport, this is not a traditional bus line with the different stop, with the permanent trajectory. The on-demand transport, this is the more flexible, because we have a small van, for example, and we could call 2, 3, 4 X people, and we will organize the trajectory in function of calls.
And am I right that technology is very empowering there? Because I think those sort of buses work much better, because essentially it can automate and predict where people want to be. Is that fair?
The second point was the mutualization with the other villages. For example, he has 5,000 inhabitants, and the village just to beside has 6,000, 7,000 inhabitants. This is not necessary to have each one of the villages a swimming pool, a theater, a cultural activities, a library in the short perimeter. The question was, I have a swimming pool, you have a cultural center. You have a kiosk for a library, I will have the market for mutualization. For that, we need to break the administrative barriers for managing not my own swimming pool, etc., but mutualize. And mutualize, for that, this is at the same time, in terms of the budget, has a great positive impact, because, of course, by the phenomenon of mutualization, we have more capability. And the first point, to implement the new business model. A business model for the raw materials, for the short circuits.
So a business model for the who, sorry? For the
raw materials. The matières premières.
Raw materials, sorry.
Raw materials.
Sorry, forgive me.
The raw materials. For having more local raw materials. For a long time in these places, for example, we have the material replaced by the materials, by the cheap materials. We have developed the local, modern agriculture. But to have developed, they have developed as well the new technologies for developing, for example, the design, the software applications. To transform the business model of this kind, they have developed, for example, an incubator for startups in the condition of rurality for attracting more people. And in this area, this is so beautiful. We have a nice contact with nature, and a lot of young people prefer.
So I'm going to, there's lots for Richard to pick up on there. Richard is in charge of a large bit of England, so he's going to implement all that by the middle of next week, aren't you, Richard? Yes, of course he is. Thank you very much. I'm going to move us on to the next question, which was about the new line town in Saudi Arabia, which is sort of claimed to be a 15-minute city, and it's that huge, great, odd thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know very, very well this project, NEOM, the line. I received a lot of proposals when this project has started. I have a lot of friends of mine that has established the first master plan. I went recently in Riyadh for discussing on that. My point of view is known, it's public. This is the fake project.
I agree.
This is the fake project.
I think let's leave it there as a fake project. We don't need to discuss it anymore. Right, we are close to running out of time, but I am going to take two more questions at the back. So the gentleman right at the back, and then Tom a little bit further forward. Yeah, we'll reverse that. Tom, and then the chap at the back.
Thank you. Tom Chance from the Community Land Trust Network. I was thinking about your mentioning time and flow in urban areas and change. Your French example of a village is in a country that has a radically decentralized form of governance and ownership compared to Britain. How do you achieve the kind of evolution of a successful local neighborhood when that neighborhood is governed by and owned by entities that might have regional or national operation in the UK? We don't have that agency at the local level, except for businesses, small businesses, maybe.
So before you come to that, we'll just take the final question, and then we'll answer that. So, and then there was a hand up right at the back as well. Thank you, Tom. Sorry, I thought you were, no, okay, I'm not sure who, was there another hand?
Sorry, I think it was my hand,
okay, Gail, sorry for calling you a man, Gail, please forgive me, I couldn't see your
right.
face properly.
On International Women's Day, that's fair enough.
Yeah, no, well, but you were hidden behind some man who was outrageously in front of you. No, it's a woman in front of you. There you go, a woman was blocking your face, Gail.
No, I just wanted to ask you, Carlos, so this is really a joke question.
Could you go a little bit closer to the microphone, please?
Okay, a question, Carlos, and this is in light-heartedness, not in seriousness, but London was always known as a city of urban villages. Were you inspired in your thinking by London rather than Paris's quarters?
Brilliant, marvellous. So first, so London used to be known as the city of urban villages because in fact it grew out of lots of Anglo-Saxon and medieval villages like Fulham and Lambetter and things like that. So Gail is jokingly asking, were you in fact inspired by London rather than by Paris? So we'll start with that one, then we'll go back to Tom's question. Were you inspired by London? And I hope someone's live recording this. Carlos, London is the inspiration of 15-minute city, surely.
No, you're right. No, seriously, I said to Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris, I said to the president of the great metropolis, Patrick Collier, that we need to be inspired by London in two aspects. The first one, the local governance, because in Paris, we don't have a real governance for this area with almost 10 million of inhabitants. The city of Paris is a little city. Inside of the ring, the peripheric, we are 2.2 million of inhabitants, 120 square kilometers, with 20,000 inhabitants square kilometer. The great metropolises, we have in the compact zone almost 7 million of inhabitants, distributed in 132 communes, each one, and aggregated in 11 public governance. And we have a third level the Île-de-France region, 10 million of inhabitants inside the great metropolis, inside Paris. And the authorities are totally different. If the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, wishes to change a bus stop in Paris just for a few meters, she hasn't right for that. Because all mobility in Paris, the authority is the region, the Île-de-France region. This is totally crazy. In the city of Paris, for example, we have the Grand Boulevard, the Grand Axis, the road axis. The authority for the Grand Axis is the national government. If the mayor of Paris wishes, for example, to change the signs of the way, the boulevard down the axis.
The way the boulevard goes through Paris, yes.
Yeah, she hasn't right. If we have a pollution peak, we need to set stop cars in this axis.
But you know,
she needs to call the national government.
But I mean, London is the only place in England where there is some degree of regionalisation. So I think we've had various mayors of bits of England, you know, on this stage today. I think, I can't put words into their mouth, but I think they would very much recognise the situation you describe, where they're not actually empowered to do lots of things. I don't think we're so much better. Can I just lead you on to Tom's question, which actually is very much on this territory. Tom was asking about how in the countryside you achieve change, and asking you to comment on the difference between French regional government and English regional government, which I think to some degree we've probably touched on, actually. I wonder if I can just pull out one final thought, and then, because we're beginning to run over time. I decided when I started this I just would run over time, and yes, they're all scrunching at me. So my final question is this: we've talked about place, we've talked to some degree about politics and people. Change is something that many people find scary. If we're used to moving around our towns and cities a certain way, people proposing to alter that can be disconcerting. And I think that's legitimate that that's disconcerting. It's not, how we move around our towns, our villages, our cities, our neighbours is unavoidably political. You're not a politician, I'm not a politician, but you don't need me to say that obviously some of what you said has become political. I don't want you to get into the politics of it, but just your reflections after a couple of years of probably a bit more politics than you wanted in your life. What lessons do you take for that? There are lots of people in this room passionately committed to making happier, more beautiful, more mobile places in a good way. There's a happy mobility. What would you, from what's been good or perhaps less good over the last couple of years, what would you share with the audience about how to affect change in a way that goes with the grain and brings people together, not pulling them apart?
No, this is a reality. I'm not a politician, but I have a really close contact with politicians. The first one, of course, Anne Hidalgo, when she embraced this concept. And I said very, very often in different conferences or just in our daily activities, we have two faces of the same problem. On the one hand, one of the most important obstacles for our transformations is ourselves, because a lot of people consider that this normality, long distances, car dependency is the only thing that exists. This is the normality. When Anne Hidalgo wishes to ban the diesel cars along the Seine River, this was really evident that this is no more the time for having a motor highway along the Seine River. But the most important obstacle for that was the citizen, that we have a lot of demonstration of Parisians for saying, I want to conserve my highway along the Seine River. This is totally irrational. We have more and more an irrational behavior when we want to just to shift from the ancient model to another model. And the second obstacle is the local governance that have feared for provoking this change. In a lot of places, the difficulty is this circle. We have a lot of resistance by citizens for shifting the mindset, and the local governors in the position for be elected in the next time prefer to change nothing for being sure that for the next elections people will vote for them.
And the great god Kronos is leaning upon my shoulder, trying to move us off the stage. So just in a final sentence, from those difficulties, what's the best way, do you think, to take people with you? Do you have any thoughts from the last couple of years as to how to do that, or do you regard it as something that is actually very, very hard to achieve?
I think that we need three things: a real vision, a concrete roadmap, determination, and courage for going ahead, regardless of the resistances. We need for these times to force these changes. The normality is not for changing. The normality is for block changes.
So some vision and some force is the answer. Ladies and gentlemen, that was marvelous. I could have gone on for hours. I'm sure you'd have stayed with me, but my mean colleagues are determined to keep to time. So the god Kronos has come to defeat us. But I'd like you all, please, he's come all the way from Paris. Carlos Moreno, please give him a huge round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Trust Nicholas Boyd-Smith in a session on 50-minute cities to run about 50 minutes late. So we are between you guys and your trains, so we just want to say a few quick thank yous and wrap up the day. So I'm going to wrap up some of the themes, some thank yous, and then a little bit on what might come next. We started the day with 3 Ps, with people, with place, and with politics. We forgot our 4th P, protesters. That was the joke. But throughout, thank you, Nicholas, appreciate that. But what we did have throughout the day is, I think, an evolution in those 3 Ps and a bit of a specificity about what they might mean. In some of the sessions I was in and some of the feedback I've got. In terms of politics, the discussions really led to the belief that practicality matters, right? So the discussion with Steve Reed this morning on access to green space, that we need to stop using terms like green space or nature and talk about parks or beaches and the sorts of things people enjoy. Munira Mirza in the session on trust in politics, emphasizing that the reason that we might have lost faith in our political system is that sometimes it just doesn't work for us in the way that we want it to. It doesn't achieve the practical ends that it means to. In terms of people, we talked this morning about the need for communities to have a role and to have a say. The discussions today really have led to power being the important thing. That actually one of the reasons that people aren't getting involved in parish or town councils or engaging in community activities is because those forums aren't able to affect the change that they need to. And so we need, as I think all 3 organizations agree, pretty radical devolution and decentralization. And on the final P of place, most of the discussions have actually focused on the importance of proximity. And not just in the 15-minute city discussion we had now, but in the discussion I heard earlier on heritage, hearing from Canny Ash about the need for densification, gentle densification in the Create Streets language, but that still provides people within Canny's language a front door and a back garden, the sorts of things that make them feel like a place is a home, but located close enough together that you get the environmental and social benefits that we heard from Carlos there. So people, power, proximity. Okay, there are 6 Ps, right? It was really clever, and it's too late in the day for me to pull them together. All of the sessions, the vast majority of the sessions of today are recorded and are available online. If you have found them interesting, engaging, if they've provoked thought, please do write about them, blog about them, send us your reflections. We want this to be part of the beginning of a discussion as opposed to the end of one. So, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. On behalf of Labour Together, I just want to say how delighted we are to join this year for the first time with Onward and Create Streets, and hopefully we've managed to have that spirit of disagreeing well, and we can go back to arguing tomorrow. A huge amount of effort has obviously gone into yesterday and also today, and it falls to me to really say thank you to everyone who's been involved in that, in all of the sessions that you've seen, the dinner, everything that's gone on over the past day and a half. We've had some amazing speakers. I'm not going to list everyone, but huge thank you to Steve Reed, Oliver Coppard, Tom Tugendhat, Sheila O'Neill from Halifax, Julie Nugent from Coventry, and of course Carlos Moreno for closing us off today with such brilliant reflections on the 15-minute cities. We also want to say thank you to our partners and supporters, many of whom have kind of been involved in the panels that we've had today. So we've had such a wide range of sectors and so many organizations who wanted to make sure that we were thinking properly about community and place. We had our headline partners. Thank you to Grosvenor, to Lloyds, to Barclay Group, and also thank you to our breakout partners, Historic England, BT, Hydrock, BPF, Shelter, Save Our Wild Isles, and Power to Change. I don't think I've missed anyone. It was a good list. And finally, it's a massive, massive team effort. There obviously are 3 organizations and everyone involved in there. Create Streets, Onward, Labour Together, we've been working on this for a long time with everyone really coming together to make sure that it's been a success. But I really wanted to single out Angus, Lauren, Hilary and Belle, who took on kind of every small and big thing in making this a fantastic event. So thank you very much, and over to Eleanor.
So just one last word from me from Create Streets. So after a very successful Restitch 2022 at the Peace Hall in Halifax, we're so happy that we chose Coventry for Restitch 2024 with its wondrous medieval quarter that we're in, its Basil Spence Cathedral, its world-class cycling infrastructure for those who weren't on the cycling yesterday, as well as some of its challenges, but also its plans for its future city centre south. So thank you to Coventry for hosting us. And in particular, I'm not sure if he's here, but Mark Greenwood from the council, who kind of was behind the scenes bringing people together. Colin Knight, Director of Transport, and in particular also Ian Harrabin, Historic Coventry Trust. So thank you so much for sharing your stories and your challenges. The question for us now is Restitch 2026. So we thought it would be quite interesting to find out from all of you and anybody who's here today and yesterday, where you might suggest that we would go for 2026 as we take Restitch on the road. So we need a place that is away from London, that has beauty at the heart of it, and possibly some challenges that we can discuss, and also maybe ideally a 15-minute city, because I think it's fair to say that over the last 2 days we've kind of seen that Coventry could just be the perfect 15-minute city in the making. And whilst the train station is about a 15-minute walk away, the drinks are about 1-2 minutes away. 1 minute away, in fact, just there. So a great thank you to Coventry, and see you in 2026. And just to paraphrase... How they know. Oh, yes, sorry. Hashtag Restitch24, please. So tweet your suggestions to us.
With a photo, with the
With
photo that will persuade us, and we'll look at all the tweets and the photos and the hashtags, and then we'll pick from those tweets.
Or maybe we do a poll or something.
Sure.
But
we talked about this before.
yes, we did. We kind of half did, but only 2 minutes ago. And then the last thing, I was just going to paraphrase something that Victoria Hill said on the Builders Blockers panel. She said it very eloquently it was a very long paragraph, but ultimately what she said was, please let's just collaborate and be nicer to each other. So have a nice drink and see you in 26.
How do I phrase the tweet? Do I say, use the hashtag or tweet the hashtag?